Now, the way that you hold your watercolour brush can make a big difference on the way that you can produce a painting. So let me show you today just a few things about the way that I tend to hold my watercolour brush and those reasons why. Now, very often people ask me, Paul, how do you manage to get such fine lines, such fine details of your work? Now, one of the main reasons for that is the way that I tend to hold my brush. So I'm holding my brush quite low down, as you can see, towards the metal ferrule, working with these details here on this obviously kestrel. But because I'm doing that, that enables me, show you on here, look, that enables me to kind of control my little marks here and there, because I've got much more tighter control, so I'm holding it really tight in my left hand, as you can tell I'm a lefty. Excuse the white paint, by the way. Yeah, okay. So that means I can create very tiny marks like that, just by holding the brush really low down. I stipple and create very curved lines by the way that I hold the brush. However, if I decide to hold the brush further up the handle, around there for example, rather than really low towards the metal ferrule, yeah, let's push it over there, look, I find I've got less control over these details, not quite as tight, not quite as fine with that, as you can see. Not too bad, but not quite as fine. So because of that, I haven't got that nice tight control where I can really pick out those details. I know that obviously traditional watercolour you want to paint fairly loosely anyway, don't you? So it depends on the style of watercolour you prefer to do. So with me, because I'm a fine artist, I like to work with very, very tiny details by holding my brush very low down towards the ferrule. However, if you wanted to create more of a scumble technique, let me get a bigger brush. I'll show you what I mean. It'll be easier with a larger brush. Let's pick up a size 6. I don't know, we'll go for that one more. So if you wanted to scumble, take some paint off the brush, then I would have to hold the brush further back like that. So over this side now, about halfway along. So that means that I can hold the brush more or less on its side like this, just about on its side anyway. And then using the side of the brush, a bit too much paint on the brush, scumble. So basically what you're doing there is picking up the texture of the paper with a semi-dry brush by holding the brush lower down. So if I try to scumble now, I can't quite. It's a bit awkward to get my hand on its side and so on, trying to get in the right position. Whereas when you're like this, then you can scumble. You can create all sorts of patterns like this. Look at that, that's better. Look. That's more like it. Picking up the texture of this cold pressed paper. So let's switch back to my size 00. So let's take, for example, get some blue. That one just there, look, there you go. Let's say, for example, I wanted to be able to paint a very fine but wavy line. I would load the brush, I would roll it as I pull away. Sometimes I'll tap it, depends how much paint I want on the brush. But then I'd sort of ghost the idea first of all. And because I'm holding my brush quite low down like that, that enables me to kind of use the natural curve of my hand, like this sort of thing, or even just the fingers, to create more or less a very smooth sort of curve, like so. There you go. And it goes onto my finger, like so. Alright, so that's what you can do by holding the brush low down. If I try to do the same thing by holding the brush further away, move out of the way, thank you. Holding the brush further away. Okay, let's try and get that sort of natural curve of my hand again. I'll just do it up there, that's better. I try and do it nice and fine again, but it's harder because I'm not quite as, not vertical, but just off vertical, probably this sort of angle. So if I just show you that, that's vertical there, isn't it? This one is more or less that sort of angle there. Now, I'm actually lower down because I'm holding the brush further along the handle. So, let's try this one. So, ghost it first, something like that. I'm going to try and keep it nice and fine. And it's not too bad, apart from that little part there. But I found that harder to control rather than working with a very tight line like that by just basically touching and skimming the paper, because you've got more control by holding it lower down. The same applies if you want to create some squiggles as well. So if I wanted to do squiggles like this, let's just hold it lower down first of all. And I can create little squiggle effects like so. So I've got a very tight control over this brush. Very tight, like so. Reload that brush, take some off again. So it's about the same amount of paint on that brush. I hold the brush further along the handle again, like that, and we'll try that, okay? I keep automatically wanting to go back down there. I've been painting for about 40 odd years now, so I'm used to holding my brush quite low down. Okay, here we go, ready? Let's try that. There, that's better. Okay, try and keep it as fine as I can. I'm trying to keep it nice and fine. Come off the pressure, Paul. Come off the pressure. Not too bad, but I found that very difficult to control because I didn't have that tighter control of it. So as I mentioned, traditionally you would have the brush fairly loose because we're working with larger washes, less detail than what I tend to do here. But if you're like me and you like to paint in detail, especially with watercolours, then what I suggest you do is hold the brush further down for those very tiny little details. If you're interested as well on knowing the watercolour brushes which I use for my detailed wildlife paintings, have a look to the video in the top right. I'll see you there.